So our topic today is breaking limiting habit patterns and moving into our joy. So it's a very three simple, you always have to have numbers, right? Every time I look things up, 5 steps to 10 steps. We have 3 steps. Create new habits, persevere, and keep it simple. Right? Create new habits, persevere, keep it simple. When I went to the Agape Center, or Agape International Center of Truth, which is a community like this in Los Angeles, but a mega community, I was doing my practitioner training. For those of you who are new to our community, we have something called licensed practitioners, and it's a lot of work. It's 2 years of prerequisite training, and then the training itself is 2 years, followed by a written test and an oral test. So I was in the practitioner training at Agape, and there were many years ahead of this. Has been going on for years. But somehow, at the end of our Practitioner 1 training, and at Agape, it wasn't just whatever that was required from Centers for Spiritual Living. They added stuff. So it was a year. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of time. So just like regular school, we can't wait till summer. Summer's off. But at the end of our Practitioner 1, they decided to change it on us, on our class. They said, well, we've decided you don't get the whole summer off. You have to work in our prayer ministry 5 hours for 3 weeks at one point in the summer. We all completely rebelled at our summer being taken away from us. And Agape had their own prayer ministry, so it was a room with lots of phones, and prayers kept coming in. They have it 24/7. So they always needed people to man it, to be people there, so we felt like we were being used. And so we had all these complaints, and we thought completely reasonable and rational. You've worked us hard, let us have some time off. But we still, good students, do what we're asked to do. And I signed up, and there was 1 week where I had to do all 5 hours at once because of my work schedule. I had to get all 5 hours on one day. Now, like everything at Agape, every ministry, there's a training. Ushers and greeters, you have to go to a training. There was a chair ministry, because chairs were always being moved around. There was a training, because everything was seen as a service to the divine presence, the infinite love intelligence. You're not serving people. You're not serving your friend. You're not serving Agape. You're not serving Reverend Michael. We are serving the divine. And everything is the divine, and everything needs to be infused in the divine. So whatever the ministry was, you went into a training to how to live that. And the prayer ministry was no different. So even though we were doing prayers all the time in class, there was a definite structure how to do this. No talking in between calls. You're in meditation. You're not chatting with friends. How you open the call, how you end the call. So it's very structured. So again, more rules, more things to think about, more things for me to complain about. But try meditating and praying for 5 hours. They get a lot of calls, so there was a lot of prayers. And in between those prayers, we're meditating. By the time I walked out of that room, I was in absolute bliss. And I thought, the thought in my mind said, I can't believe I ever resented coming here. This is incredible. It's extraordinary. And I felt like I was walking in light. It was so magnificent. And this is often what it's like to break limiting habit patterns, that when we allow Spirit to guide us, it's going to push us past, and we're going to say, well, it's out of my routine. It's out of what I'm used to. It's moving me into a new world, and I don't want to. It's just another to-do list to check off. And that's what it felt like when they originally told us. It's just another thing to check off our list of requirements for practitioner training. But in fact, it was pushing us into greater light, into greater love, into greater joy. I was resisting my greater good. Interestingly, after my required time, I did not go back and serve more hours. Now, I was serving in a lot of areas of ministry at Agape, but not that particular one, because that one challenged me more than others, because it still, even with all the work that I was doing, one of my limiting habit patterns is not introversion, so we're clear. Introversion is just, it's not that you're antisocial, it just means that you don't need as much social stimuli as someone who's extroverted. It's just a matter of degree. It doesn't mean that you're shy or timid. I also happen to be born very shy and timid. So praying for people on the phone was still a stretch that made me uncomfortable. So I preferred doing other forms of service where I didn't feel so vulnerable. So I experienced bliss, I experienced joy, and yet I still chose ministries that felt more comfortable and more safe, because that is where I felt happier, because I was comfortable and I was safe. When we talk about breaking limiting habit patterns, we want to be clear that what we're talking about are patterns in this world that limit us. Who we are habit patterns. I remember I was working with my practitioner on the who am I inquiry. Maybe you've tried that meditation before. So I just was living in who am I, just as a mantra. The way we would do a mantra, I am love, I am joy. I was, who am I? Who am I? I wasn't trying to answer it. I was just, who am I? All day long, all night long. And I was immersed in the inquiry while I was at work, while I was at home, while I was eating. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And I was just ongoing for about 3 weeks. And suddenly, one day, I was just walking down the hallway, and the I of me was outside of my body. And I was looking at myself. And the I said, you are habit patterns. And it was so unexciting. You know, I wanted to be something like, you are a divine child of God, or something like that. You are habit patterns. And it was sort of, but the feeling tone felt true, even though it was unexciting. That what makes us who we are patterns, all our personality tests that people like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, your horoscope, what do you call it, astrological signs, all of that are just, we all recognize that we have patterns, and those patterns have habits. And so that correspond with the patterns. So we all have it. Being part of this world is having habits. We're not trying to get rid of habits, because then to put it differently, in Hinduism they say we have 5 sheaths, which are coverings. We have 5 coverings. Now they use the word sheath like what a sword is put into. And I love that analogy, actually, because if we think about a sword is very sharp. And if you put it on the side of your body without a sheath, it's going to cut you, it's going to stab you. So the sheath is to protect you. When we hear about people who have direct experience of spirit, where all those sheaths are removed, as we see in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, when he's with Krishna, and Krishna just lets all form go, and he is direct contact with the power and the infiniteness of spirit, it's too much. It's extraordinary, and it's amazing, and it's awesome, and Arjuna's like, enough, please put the sheaths on. Come on, put yourself back in covers. I get it, but it's a little much. Make yourself smaller so I can handle it. And in fact, so many spiritual teachers tell us this, that just to be on this plane of existence, we need a few sheaths. Once we let go of those sheaths, it's time to leave this planet. I believe someone like Paramahansa Yogananda, he was getting to the point where the sheaths were no longer, he was able to sustain it, so he was no longer able to stay on this planet, because the vibration was getting so high that we can't vibrate here. So we're going to have coverings while we are here. We may have moments where we're totally free from them, but to operate, and I think we are here to be on this plane, to participate and to operate here, not to, there are a few people who I think are called to be monastics and hermits, but I would say 95% of us are here to participate, to make the world a better place, to be a higher vibration, but we still have our coverings. So this tells us that there's different levels of habit patterns as well. So there's the habits that we've created just behaviorally as we go along. I had a friend, his mother was in the 12-step program, and she didn't have childcare, so he used to go with her to the 12 steps. And it made him very conscious of addiction. So as an adult, he was really reticent to do any habit for very long. He noticed, I remember we'd go to Starbucks every morning for like 4 months, and then he's like, that's it. I've been going to Starbucks for 4 months, that's becoming a habit, cut it out. And he just stopped. Because anything that reeked of an addiction for him was scary. He still has his habits, but those are just basic behavioral habits that we all create. So that's one thing of, are those habits serving us, are they helping us, are they limiting us? And we can change them. Then we have personality habits that came developmentally through our childhood, through the way we recognize psychologically that how we perceive ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, how we operate in the world was very influenced by our environment growing up, by our parents, or our primary caregivers, whatever that was, or whoever that was for you, had an incredible impact on how we live our life. So habits were created, habits of how we see ourselves and then operate and make choices from that. That's a little bit deeper than just behavioral, I'm drinking coffee every day and I'm going to stop. So there's different levels of habits. And then we have habits that come from what we would say DNA from our ancestors. Some people may say it's karmic habit patterns that we're born with, or from past lives. However we describe it, we're born with a propensity. I do not believe we are born as blank slates, as sometimes we hear. We are born, anyone who's had children sees the inherent differences in children from the day they're born. That there are, at least we know genetically, DNA, people already have a coding within us. That's really deep stuff. Those are habits that are created from something beyond our experience just on this planet. So when we talk about changing limiting habit patterns, there's different levels and depths. So there might be a behavioral habit pattern we want to change, and maybe it was created just in the last year or so. But that behavioral habit pattern could also be a result of how we were raised. It also could be a result of our DNA and our ancestry of how we were born. So we have all these degrees when we're looking at our habit patterns and saying, it's not getting rid of habit patterns, but habit patterns that limit our fullness of expression in our everyday life, from really showing up full on. We know when we're around people who are just completely wide open and giving fully of themselves, and others who have the limiting habit patterns that block us from, we might fully express in one area, but not in another. So we can handle it at the level of behavioral change habits, get rid of things, I'm not going to do this anymore. And we want to change it always include everything on all levels, which is the spiritual habits. So we want to create good spiritual habits. And because we're in a spiritual community, prayer and meditation for me are those core practices. Because that's always taking us back to first cause, to past the 5 she's, those moments where we can pass all these layers and really touch into that connection with that which is free of all past precedent. So creating a daily spiritual practice of meditation and prayer. And what they find actually is that a place that allows us to shine fully is having structure. For instance, music. They did this study that no matter what someone's personal preference was musically, that Baroque music, which is very structured music, not always very interesting musically, but very structured, it has a very healing impact on our body temple. I've read, if you have regular exercise practice, eating practice, all these things create health, and the same is true with our spiritual practices. The more consistent we are with prayer and meditation, and we continually show up to those practices to touch into our eternal self and our eternal being, we find that it serves us in every area. It starts freeing us up from areas that limit us, limiting habit patterns. So creating good habits, and I'm saying creating good spiritual habits. Now, having been a minister for 20 years, I'm also very familiar with all the conversations of how hard it is to be consistent in prayer and meditation every day. And what I want to say is, yes, it is very difficult to come up with a consistent, not come up with it, it's easy to create it in our head, but to actually fulfill a constant, everyday, regular practice of meditation and prayer. Why? I love one teacher said, it is work. It's prayer. He says, we call it prayer work because it's work. And the work is, we are surrounded in thoughts. We have our own habit patterns of thoughts. We're in a world we have so much thought, and even more with social media and texting and emailing. We have just things coming at us all the time. To stop that, it takes force, it takes effort to say, I'm going to stop that, turn my attention away from all of that that's surrounding me, that's in me, that's in my own thinking, stop it, and either try to still it, slow it down, and even pray from a place where I'm moving into a higher state of being. That takes work and effort, and I love in the reading today, she says 100 times a day, I have to remember who I am 100 times a day, because all day long we're getting the opposite of the world. Very few of us are living in prayer without ceasing. If you're living in prayer without ceasing, then that shift isn't so great. Then that work isn't so great. But I don't know how many of us, when we're participating in the world, live in prayer without ceasing. We're acknowledging and thinking about things that are happening in the world. We're engaged. There's problems and there's within our family, within our work life, within our country, within our culture that need to be thought through. So we're thinking about it, and we have to force ourselves to stop and move into that eternal place. To do that day after day after day after day, and to silence our mind and be willing to sit in meditation. We know from exercise, people love exercise. Once people start doing exercise, they love doing it, but it's the getting started to doing it every day, to put on your shoes, to put on your workout clothes. Once you're there, you love it, but it's making that shift. It's the same thing with prayer and meditation, and that's just one more thing to do. So all these healthy habits start becoming like a task list, and so then we think, I don't really want to do that today. It's like, I have enough going on. When we start realizing how important it is, we want to persevere, because the perseverance does make a difference. Showing up even when we don't want to show up. Showing up and persevering to sit in the midst of the I don't want to be here, we start to experience that which is eternal. Because the eternal, sometimes we think the eternal is based on when we're in a good mood or when everything is flowing right in my schedule. But to take stock and meditate, I love the way Shunryu Suzuki puts it, is taking the one seat in the midst of your problem. Just whatever is going on, you can't stop your mind because you're just so emotionally charged about something, you're physically not feeling well, but to take the one seat in the midst of that, to sit in the midst of that, there is nothing more powerful. It's returning to that infinite love intelligence of the universe that is free of all habit patterns. Over time, we will recognize, just like in exercise, it has its benefits that we cannot see as it's happening. It's often very slow, and so many people, I just read it, so it's on the tip of my mind. In Shunryu Suzuki's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, he talks about when he was a monastic. It was just a way of life, that they just got up and they did their chanting and their reading and their meditation, and he said, I didn't feel anything special. It was just a way of life. That was what we felt was normal. When he had to leave to go be a Zen priest, he went back and visited the monastery, and he said, from the outside, I was crying. He said, water was coming out of my eyes, nose, and mouth. I was just sobbing, feeling the beauty of this monastic community because I was an outsider looking in. I wasn't living in it every day. It wasn't normal for me anymore, and I felt it. But when we're in it, when we're practicing every day, we don't always recognize the results. And isn't that true with exercise? We're doing it every day. We say, I'm not getting the results I want. But we know, because of all the studies, that it's helping us. Even whether we see it or feel it at that moment or not, or seeing the impact, we stay with it. The same thing with spiritual practices. So we want to create good habits, and we want to persevere. And I love, again, that reading today about, and thank you, Jerry, for finding it. It was a beautiful reading. Forgiveness. I heard one person say the mother of all spiritual practices is returning to spiritual practices when you've left them. And I believe, as I've really been with this, is that the reason why it's so hard to return to spiritual practices is because of all the judgment that we have, that I haven't done it. I stopped doing it for 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months. I just stopped. And so just getting back to it feels like, I just failed all these times, and there's this judgment. We still walk around with so much judgment in our head about the shoulds, about how we should be doing spiritual practice. So let us be clear. I love the story of the prodigal son. We are all prodigal children. We are never, ever judged. The entire time the son was away from the father, father, not mother-father, I'll say mother-father, never judged the son-daughter. Was never like, he's a bad person. That's a human judgment. Spirit is always loving. It doesn't come and go. Love does not come and go. Eternal love, it's always there. It's always present. The joy that the mother-father presence felt when the son-daughter returns is, yay, now you remember the love. I'm just so happy you remember that you're loved all the time. So every time we remember to sit down and meditate, to sit down and pray, there is zero judgment. I would say we're already forgiven. We don't need to be forgiven because there was never judgment in the first place to be forgiven, other than what we do for ourselves. But Spirit itself has never once in that entire time, I don't care how long it's been, it could be 3 years, 30 years, it does not matter. And you could do it over and over again. I do it one day, I wait 3 months, I do it another day. Doesn't matter how many times we fail or don't fail, that's a human word, we don't show up for meditation. The moment we're there, we are absolutely loved and celebrated. The entire universe is responding and saying, yes, we are so glad you're here, and throws a big feast when we sit down to meditate and pray. One step towards the divine takes 10,000 steps towards us. I know we all experience that. Every time we sit down, oh, yes, I forgot how much I love this. I forgot how wonderful this is, how much prayer makes a difference. Why do I forget? I got to do this tomorrow, and then we don't do it for another 3 weeks. So wherever you are, I posted a wonderful quote from Kabir, wherever we are is our entryway, is our starting point. Every day, we are never judged. Just sit down and practice. It doesn't matter. Everything that ever happened before that is dissolved into the nothingness from which it came. It does not exist. What exists is that moment you have remembered. We celebrate it. Persevere. Good habits, and persevere in your good habits without any judgment. The problem is calling them good habits is then there's the opposite of bad habits. Just standing in who you are. Creating habits that serve your highest self, and persevere in that as much as you possibly can. Thirdly, keep it simple. Why do we do all these habits? I talked about at the very beginning how at Agape, every ministry, every service is to the one. It's the same is true for us. Whatever habits we're creating, whether it's prayer, meditation, exercise, eating, financial habits, work habits, whatever that is, your daily habits, when we keep it simple and realize everything that we do is for the one power and the one presence. We might say, well, it's for my body, it's for my emotions, it's for my finances. Yes, and all of that is for God. The more we keep it simple, the more space we allow for healing to happen. One of the things I hear a lot is when we do a process called visioning, which is asking the divine, what is your vision for my life? Or for our collective life, and then we listen. And so many people say when they do the visioning process, I don't get anything. I believe Spirit has these divine ideas, but it's on its own time. So when we're trying to change something externally, which is often when we talk about habits, or we pray and meditate, we want things to happen, to shift. We don't what motivates us is we want change. We want something to shift that it wasn't shifted before. It can take a lot longer than we in ourselves want. Okay, it might not be in a day, but if Spirit's really at work in my life, it'll happen in a month or 2 months. But sometimes it takes a long time. And we don't know why, but Spirit we might know in hindsight, but we don't know maybe while it's happening. In 1999, I was in my senior year of ministerial school. I had a very clear calling to be a minister. I did not question that. But I didn't know what that ministry was supposed to look like, and I'm getting to my last year of ministerial school, and I'm thinking it's really important that I get the vision for what my ministry is supposed to look like. So I go on a vision quest. I went to Ojai Foundation. They have these beautiful yurts. I was by myself, and I went there for days, just day and night, just praying, meditating, visioning. What is God's vision? The vision that came was so strong and so frustrating because what it was this woman, beautiful woman, and she was pregnant and fully pregnant. Kind of like our beautiful Lindsay over there, beautiful. But Lindsay knows she's going to have this baby. In the visioning, I kept saying, I was clear that she was holding the vision of the ministry. That was, and I kept asking, and I was like, in the vision, I'm trying to pull the baby out, like, come on, I want to know what the vision is. And it was so clear this was not going to be a normal pregnancy, that this vision was staying in, it wasn't coming out. And it wasn't coming out anytime soon. There was a sense of it's there for a really long time, and it was so frustrating because I said, well, this isn't fair. You've asked me to be a minister. I'm asking what the vision of what this ministry is supposed to look like, and you're not telling me. It feels like a torturous game here. And then, to make matters worse, so then I got, so little things would come. So I got that I was supposed to be a pulpit minister, and I've talked about not wanting to be a pulpit minister. And I'll never forget Reverend Michael Beckwith did my installation when I first started in Virginia. And all these people are there. It's this big event, and he's saying, and she's your minister now, and you need to follow her vision for the ministry. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what it is. It was horrible. I didn't say that because I was too embarrassed, but I'm like, here I am. I'm like, I don't know what the vision is. They're supposed to be, I'm supposed to be a CSL minister, but I didn't have anything specific. So it's been all these years, and as many of you know, just back in this past December, the vision started coming. I just started, and effortlessly, in various aspects of the vision. It's been 20 years since I did that vision quest in 1999. Why did it take so long? I wasn't getting anything. I was trying to do everything right, and I'm not getting this vision, and it was painful even, and it didn't make sense. Things weren't changing on the outside the way that I wanted them to. So I'm thinking Spirit's not at work. Spirit's not work. There's something stagnating. I'm feeling like, what's wrong? Only in retrospect do I see it. I see how deeply and profoundly that I have been loved every step of the way. As I mentioned at the very beginning, one of my karmic past life DNA, wherever it came from, I was born into this world with extraordinary timidity and shyness. It absolutely impacted every choice I made as a child. Ultimately, if I felt comfortable with some people, then I would be fine. But just even getting to that place, I would hide behind the rhododendron bushes because the kids in the neighborhood were playing, and I didn't want them to see me as running across the street because I was afraid they'd talk to me. I hated people seeing me. I hated being visible. And there were so many things I wanted to do, but I was just too scared. It required too much of me that I wasn't able to do. So I talk about limiting habit patterns. That limiting pattern of being timid and shy blocked me so many times in my life from fully expressing things that I know would have brought me joy if I didn't have that limiting habit pattern. So as I give my life to God, and then God says, be a minister, beginning to feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm willing. And Reverend Michael talked about his bargain with God, so I'm like, well, Reverend Michael made a bargain with God. I'll make a bargain with God. I'll be a minister as long as it's not a pulpit minister. That's fine with me. But I guess my bargaining powers weren't as strong. So I became a pulpit minister, not because I was against pulpit minister or giving everything to Spirit, but because it placed me dead center with this problem of timidity and shyness. And not just with guest speaking on a Sunday morning, but when one is the minister of a church, suddenly people notice you all the time. You know, I don't walk into a room and I'm not invisible anymore. And this wasn't a small issue. This wasn't just a behavioral issue. This wasn't just a personality. I was raised a certain way. I was born with this. It was deep. And so when I say I was horrified and exhausted and sad and angry and kept arguing with the divine presence, if you loved me, why are you torturing me like this? Because it felt literally like torture to have to always be in a place where I did not want to be. I wanted to be hidden. And what I now see is just this loving, unrelenting presence is I'm going to help you break through this limiting habit pattern. But not in a day or in a month. I've given you 20 years to day in and day out find a way to be more and more comfortable in front of other people. To find it not as, okay, I'll do it because I love God. That's keeping it simple. I kept showing up because I had my simple reason to do everything. For the one power and one presence. I'm here for that more than I am for my limiting habit patterns. So I'm willing to do it, but it was still hard, to the point where it stopped being hard. And to the point where after all these years, the vision, it's time to start building, came in December. Clear as day, it's time to start building. It's time. You've had 20 years to work through this habit pattern. I'm sharing this because so often we talk about breaking limiting habit patterns. We think it's a behavioral issue, and if I just change my behaviors, those deep patterns, personality patterns, karmic habit patterns will also get shifted. And what I'm saying and opening ourselves up to is to recognize that often it takes a long time for these patterns to change. We are not condemned to limiting habit patterns. I'm not condemned to my timidity and shyness anymore. I'm not totally free of it. It still shows up, but it doesn't own me anymore. It doesn't take the joy out of being present with people anymore. It's extraordinary. To me, I feel like I'm a miracle, because when I look at where I was, even in practitioner training, I'm afraid to pray for people because I was so scared to go out of my shell to where I am today. That's a freaking living miracle. And as it's true for me, it's true for all of us. This presence loves us madly. We all have our places of weakness, of our places of fear, our places of limitation. But if we keep showing up for that simple reason, because we love the Lord our God, or the divine presence, love, intelligence, one power, the thing itself, whatever our language is, we love it more than we love anything else in the world. So no matter what, no matter who I am or what my weaknesses are or my limitations are, I keep showing up. I keep showing up no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how aggravated I get or fearful. Usually it's more fear than anything. So much fear. We keep showing up. Keep it simple. Keep whatever these new habits that you're working in. Persevere. Persevere in your forgiveness for yourself, because no one's ever judging you but you. Create good habits and keep it simple. Why are you doing it? So as you do that, this loving presence is responding in ways that we can't even begin to imagine, and sometimes we can't see moment to moment, day to day, because 20 years seems forever in a human being, but it's a blink of an eye for spirit. And also because it was compassionate. For me, working through timidity, I don't think at that deep a level, at a karmic level that I came in with, it wasn't going to be gone in a month. And it gave me time. Spirit's given me this time to really gently, compassionately work through these issues myself in grace and ease. So everything that is responding to the other one, the third point I was sort of back and forth between keep it simple and absolutely trust. When we are showing up, when we're persevering, trust that this presence absolutely loves us back. It is the love that infuses us. It wants us to shine. It wants us to live fully expressed lives, unbelievably powerful, magnificent beings of light that we are meant to be and are here to express and to shine and to live, that it wants that for each and every one of us in our own unique ways, and it is doing everything right now, not tomorrow, not in 20 years, but right now, that we are able to do to help us move along into that line of shining without these limitations that block us and limit us. That's available to us right now. We keep showing up. We are that prodigal sons and daughters to sit in that presence of our Mother, Father, infinite love, intelligence. And every day, the moment we do that, it's instant. There's a divine celebration. We've said yes to our infinite nature. We sign yes to our fullness and our greatest of yet to be. So this week, I'm inviting you to really be with what are my habits that are serving me, that are cultivating me so I can be this unlimited divine light in every area of my life. Do I have a regular meditation practice that I do consistently every day to remind myself of the internal nature that has no past precedent? Do I have a daily prayer practice? Prayer's a great idea, but do I actually sit down every day and pray to remember the truth of myself and other people in this community and this planet? We have heard all week long there's horrible things happening. Those children and the migrants in those camps are, at the very least, there's things to do and act, but at the very least, are we praying? Do we know that when we pray, it's actually changing the planet every time we sit down and pray? And are we committed to doing that prayerful practice for ourselves, for our friends, for our family, for our work life, for our community, and our nation, and our planet, the climate change? There's so much that needs us to be here, and not that we're ever judged, because we're all part of the race consciousness circling around. But every time we return, so be with that this week. What are my spiritual practices, and how can I, as much as possible, commit to showing up every day and to persevere? So all those times I don't show up, forget the judgment. There's no judgment. Forgive. If you are judging, forgive the judgment, and show up again. Persevere, 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 persevere. We need people in this world who are persevering in keeping it simple, in living their life for the divine one presence and one power. First, foremost, at the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega, and everything in between. Everything is for this one power and this one presence. Everything we do, we show up. Keep it simple. It's all about the divine one. Every time we do that, one in God is a majority. One in the divine love intelligence of the universe is a majority. Every time we sit down and pray, every time we sit down and meditate, one in the divine presence is a majority. There's only one. We live it, we move it, and we have our being with it. Let's pray. There's only one thing happening here. Even as we use all these words, I am so grateful to know that this divine love intelligence is beyond any word, anything that can be spoken. And yet these words point to that which is real. And so what a great joy to be in this collective energy, to remember together, to feel into each other's energy, that we are not doing this by ourselves, that every person today in this moment is connected with the conscious remembering, the conscious recognition that there is only one power and one presence that sources and sustains all life. Not just Earth, not just this universe, but galaxies upon galaxies upon galaxies, the billions and billions of stars, the dark holes, all the extraordinary things we are discovering about this phenomenal world that even defies our human thinking. The divine presence is the source for all of it. Its power is beyond anything we could ever imagine. Its wisdom, its intelligence, its beauty, its harmony, its love is beyond anything we could ever humanly imagine. And yet today we acknowledge that it is the source of everyone here. That each and every one of us is made in the image and likeness of this infinite good, this infinite power, this infinite creativity, this infinite joy, this infinite lightness of being, that we are all made to be fully expressed as big as the galaxies upon galaxies. Each and every one of us is a vehicle of the galaxies of spirit wanting to birth itself into form in multiple ways. We are multiple dimensions of being, each and every one of us, and we are here to express that powerful light in every area of our life. We are, in our true essence, unlimited in what we can create and what we can say and what we can do and what we radiate and pulsate from every level and dimension of our being. We are the life of pure spirit right here and right now. There is nothing that can limit us. There is nothing. And these old habit patterns that have limited us in the past are even now in this conscious presence of oneness, in this conscious presence of truth that has no past precedent. We are transforming even now. Those limitations are dissolving into the nothingness from which they came, whether it is immediate and instant, whether it is over time and space. They are dissolving now. They are dissolving now into the nothingness from which they came, and all that is left is pure joy, pure light, pure freedom, pure creativity, the brilliance and the beauty and the harmony and the magnificence of spirit. And we are it now. We are it now. And as we know this, beyond a shadow of a doubt here in this room, we know that we are that healing presence for this entire planet, this planet that is crying out for people to know the truth, that spirit is the source, the goodness, the love, the harmony, the health, the joy, the love, the compassion is alive and awake as every atom and cell of all creation on this earth, as all people and all nations. And we speak a special word for those beautiful children in camps, that not only are they being cared for in ways that we can't even begin to imagine, that we call forth this activating principle of power, of creativity, of unlimited good to be pouring forth in every level and dimension of these children's lives. that every good that there has ever existed is now cultivating and being nurtured, and systemically things are changing as well as individually, that everything is conforming and shifting into this infinite goodness of God. For one in this goodness, one in this power and this light and this joy is a majority. And today, this moment, we stand in that consciousness and we call forth the goodness that we know is inherent in every migrant child and all the systems that are there to support them. And things are shifting this moment because of what we are knowing here today. I am so grateful for the power of truth. I am so grateful for the power of the presence being known and activated through each of our consciousness individually and collectively. And even as we know this collectively, we know we are joining spiritual communities all over this planet who are joining us in knowing this collectively. And this power of collective prayer is absolutely transforming and transmuting all limiting habit patterns that limit any human being. And all human beings, all sentient life forms, the earth, the plants, the animals, are being set free to shine and live and express the fullness of the divine presence here and now. Here and now. We claim it, we accept it, we speak it into the law, knowing that as we have seen it and known it, it is done in the eternal, and as it is done in the eternal, it is done in time and space. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Divine Love Intelligence, for knowing your truth today. And I'm so grateful that as we have known this here, it is done. We completely release it, we let it be. And together we say as one, and so it is. Amen and amen.
So it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen.
Yes. Woo. Thank you. God is good.
Thank you.